The Canon EOS 3 is a camera that I definitely don't use nearly as much as I should. Before I flew out to the US a few months ago, I used it on a couple of shoots and I realized just how capable and fun this camera is to use. Today I've got loads of images from a shoot where I used the Canon EOS 3 and an ultra-wide Tokina 11-16 lens. Scrolling through Instagram, I always bookmark and revisit portraits that interest me, and I remember a little while back seeing some ultra-wide portraits that really intrigued me and inspired me to try out something similar. I have the Tokina 11-16 predominantly to be used with the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro that I'm shooting on now. It works out as roughly a 17mm to 26mm field of view equivalent. It's a great wide-angle lens for that camera, and I love the image that I get when I use that combination. So that made me question how it would look as a wide-angle lens option for photography as well. Fortunately, the Pocket 6K Pro has a Canon EF lens mount, which is the same as my Canon EOS 3 film camera, and thus, this shoot was born. I took a really makeshift backdrop and stand to Carmela's house, and also used a fairly new strobe light that I picked up fairly recently that I'll be making a video about soon. We shot some images indoors in this studio setup and also some images outside in the sunlight, going for a more vibrant and eccentric style to the outfit. All of the studio shots were shot with just the one strobe light positioned in varying positions around Carmela, and the film I used indoors was Cinestill BWXX, which was actually a brand new film stock to me. Outside I shot with Kodak Gold 200 and completely natural light. Ultra-wide portraits are definitely an incredibly unique look, but I think they're some of my favourite portraits that I've actually ever taken. Because the Tokina 11-16 is designed for a crop sensor, at 11mm up till about 13mm focal length, there is a completely black circle around the image, which actually gives a really interesting aesthetic. The circular border fits the quite heavily fisheye and distorted look and frames the subject for portraits really well. At 16mm, the circular frame has disappeared, but the images are still incredibly wide and distorted. Typically, portraits are most flattering at around 85mm or perhaps even as short as 50mm, but most would say 85mm is the ideal focal length, and that's the complete other end of the spectrum to these images and falls more into the telephoto lens category. For a shoot that was designed to be a little eccentric and pushing the boundaries of what's normal for portrait photography, I'm really happy with how the images turned out. shooting process with the EOS 3 is just so easy and intuitive that it makes shooting so enjoyable. I can focus on composition and making Carmela's poses natural and comfortable and where I want my light to be placed, and I don't have to worry about what the camera is doing. I really love using this camera in this sort of setting. Using strobe lighting as well made the lighting really controlled, and once I dialed in what I liked, it was an absolute breeze. I did use a spot meter for these photos just to ensure that the flash was exposed correctly on Carmela's skin. The Tokina 11-16 actually has a quite impressive close focus distance, and so I could get really quite close to Carmela's face and really distort the image whilst keeping everything in pretty good focus. I was pleasantly surprised with how accurate the autofocus on the lens actually was when paired with this older camera, and I was perfectly okay with how sharp the lens was, even at the widest focal length, corner to corner. As I said, I'm super happy with how the images turned out, and I'd love to experiment a little bit more with ultra-wide photography for portraits and fashion in the future. That's all for this one. Let me know your thoughts on these images down below in the comments. I'm intrigued to see if the ultra wide angle perspective is well received, because I personally love it and I'm really happy with these images. So I'd love to know what you think compared to the more traditional portrait and fashion shoots that I've done before. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you want to see more of my content, do please consider subscribing. Stay safe everyone, stay happy, and I'll see you in the next one.